Hi guys, some of you may not know this, but some years ago Nigel Farage had his own show on LBC where he could use that platform to spread misinformation about asylum seekers, about the European Union, about the NHS, about pretty much everything and anything under the sun. Now it seems that he's been replaced, at least politically, by Nick Ferrari, where he's spreading pretty much the same type of rhetoric. Have a listen to this.
Do you realise now that we have a government that is prepared to employ, I would imagine, fairly expensive counsel, legal advice, so that they can act against the interests of the local people and for the interests of arrivals or migrants? That is the reality. We have a government department, and quite an important one, that will sanction the expenditure of, I would imagine, fairly costly and very good legal representation to ensure that the interests of the migrants surpass the interests of the local people. That's how this government chooses to treat the electorate.
This is exactly the same rhetoric we're hearing from Elon Musk. This is exactly the same rhetoric we're hearing from Nigel Farage. Instead of actually informing the public, he's just regurgitating these talking points. So, what is happening here? The government have an obligation under international law to provide accommodation to asylum seekers. Now, some of those asylum seekers are currently in ex-hotels. The government wants to move them out of ex-hotels into regular housing. Now, the political parties on the right, the Conservatives and Reform, saw an opportunity to try and kick these people out before then. So they took this injunction, they got this injunction from a court. The injunction was overturned because, not because of the European Convention on Human Rights, not because of international conventions, but because the original case was not watertight. It did not stand up to scrutiny. So the appeal court overturned it. It said that the council had no right to stop the government from housing people in these ex-hotels. That was basically the ruling. Now what you're hearing is the government is picking sides. It's saying, oh, well, we want to pick the side of asylum seekers over the local residents. They have to pick the side of international agreements. The UK signed up to international agreements, so they will trump local laws, local regulations, local protest. That's the reality of the situation. Is Nick Ferrari suggesting that the UK should leave the European Convention on Human Rights? Is he suggesting that the UK leave the UN conventions in order to satisfy people in Epping? Because that's where it starts from. And then what happens? So the hotels are closed because some people in Epping didn't like the refugees or asylum seekers in hotels. Then where do they go? Because the government, if they're forced to move them out, they have to go somewhere. Now, the Conservatives are talking about putting them on barges. Reform UK wants to put them in camps. Neither party has said where these barges are coming from and where these camps are going to be set up. So in the meanwhile, they have to be housed in these hotels or ex-hotels because under the obligations that the government have, they have to house them somewhere. They don't provide them with jobs. They don't allow them to work. So they have to be housed. They have to be provided with a basic standard of living because they're not allowed to work. There is a way out of this. Process the claims and allow asylum seekers to work so you can move more of them out of the emergency accommodation, more of them out of hotels, more of them out of these types of housing. The government are not pushing back correctly on this. They're not calling out these commentators like Nick Ferrari and others. And Nick Ferrari is sitting there regurgitating the sort of rhetoric we heard from Nigel Farage about how, well, the government is picking sides. It's picking the sides of these illegal migrants over ordinary people. When in reality, they're enforcing international law. And of course, when it came to the Epping Hotel itself, the hotel in Epping, it was the council that made a mistake. The council was on no grounds to actually have this place closed. They attempted, but they failed. That's the reality of the situation. And unfortunately, this issue is getting completely out of hand. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think, and I'll see you in the next video.